There's a good thumbnail to start off with. Good morning to the world. One gone, one in, one gone, one in, one gone, one in, one gone. This thing on? Elizabeth Grogan, hello from Europe. Good morning and welcome. Today we're going to learn about a new serial killer. Yay. Sorry the lighting sucks. Light bulb went out for the studio lights, like the ones that are behind me here. So I'm kind of like shaded. What can you do? Give you a reference to how big this light bulb is. Almost the size of my mic stand. Scott B, good morning, Scott. Yeah, light bulb went out. It's all wobbly in there. Don't work. Like a regular light bulb, if you can't see those, but like right here where my finger is, there's a white spot. You can hear it flopping around. When they go, they go. They're expensive too. Big old light bulb is. But so the light that's normally over here that's actually facing towards me, those lights back there are stationary. They wouldn't reach over here if I had to move them over here. Way too much of a hassle trying to move them. Good morning, Francie. Hope all is well. Everything is well here, Francie. Good morning and welcome. Today we're going to take a look at a new serial killer that they have confirmed now is definitely a serial killer. They originally thought that he's already doing time for murder, but they have now discovered that he has multiple victims over multiple states. Cat Power, have you been affected by Hurricane Ian? No, I have not, Cat Power. I live in Washington State, the opposite side of the United States from where the hurricane is. But if you have or anybody else has, my heart goes out to you, and I hope you all can stay safe. It's been devastating. I have a lot of family and friends who live in Florida and in Virginia and in the Carolinas. I see you. Hi, everyone. I hope you're all well. All okay. From the UK. Well, good morning, I see you. Back in the 80s, my mother used to have a personalized license plate on her Trans Am that the letters were O-I-C-U. O-I-C-U. Good morning, Gayla. Purple, good morning. Hope you slept well. For the most part, I did. My wife and my sister, nieces and nephews and all of them were up partying until about 12:30, 1 o'clock this morning. I slept through. I got woke up a couple of times while they were making noise, but I slept through it for most part, and so did my son. So we're good there. All right, we're gonna learn about a new serial killer, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm gonna put myself down. Well, it would be this corner down here. I'll be in this little tiny window in my little box while we learn about a new serial killer. Linda, good morning. Hope everything is good with y'all. Linda from Ireland. Good morning. All right. So we're gonna learn about a new serial killer who has now been confirmed that he has killed men and women in multiple states. Ladies and gentlemen, let me get myself in my little window here. Hi, I'm still here. All right, this is Gary Muehlberg. Gary Muehlberg is currently incarcerated in Missouri for the murder of one Doc. That was his nickname, Doc. Kenneth Doc Atkins, who he murdered some years back. The crimes that he has now been linked to and confessed to go back 32 years ago. Sensible Crimes, good morning. Welcome to the stream. 32 years ago, originally they linked him by DNA, and then through multiple conversations with law enforcement, he wrote out confessions to all of them, or confessed over a phone call. Yep. And go over here to my other screen so I can move it to the next slide. Gary is now 73 years old. The crimes that he, has now been confirmed and linked to through DNA and confession are from 32 years ago. Again, like I said, he wrote out a complete confession to all the crimes. It made additional confessions to not just one, but it should say murders, like plural, that have not yet discovered. They don't know where these two individuals are, but we'll get into that in a minute. They called him the package killer. Good morning, Karen. Well, glad you could be here this morning with us. Like Ridgway and Ted Bundy, he went back to every one of his victims after he murdered them, but different from Ridgway and from Bundy was he always left a little trinket. These were little toys or trinkets that you would buy at a dollar store, Dollar General, or something like that. They were just cheap little tchotchke items, but he always left an item with each and every one of the victims after going back to see them again. One lady he brought little plastic whistles to, and I'll put her name up on the screen here in just a minute. But he was actually doing time for the murder, again for Kenneth Doc Atkins. All right, next slide. These are the confirmed victims. Robin Byhan, I think you pronounce it. Not sure if that's right or not. Brenda Little R. Pruitt, Donna Riedemere, Sandra Little, unknown victim, Kenneth Doc Atkins, a partial confession to a murder of a woman in Iowa, and a partial confession to a woman in Missouri. I don't know if that's I don't know if his ancestry ICU to answer that question. I don't know if it's Dutch. I know people with last names that are similar to it, but they have German ancestry. But maybe Dutch, could be. I don't know. Sorry if I can't answer that. But these are his confirmed victims as of right now. But so he's in prison currently, for Kenneth Doc Atkins, and he's written out confessions to all of these, including the two partial confessions to the one in Iowa and Missouri. And the deal that he struck with the district attorney in the state was that they will not seek the death penalty for for along with his confession to these crimes. If he finishes up the confession to Iowa, Missouri, again, they've all agreed that they will not seek the death penalty for him. He's going to already die in prison. He's 73 years old now, and the reason why he's confessed to the crimes now is because he has gone into partial liver failure. along with he has other health conditions as well. And there's no saving him from this. It's me again. That's the end of the slides. Yay. All right. So additionally, to tell you a little bit more about his actual crimes itself, each and every victim, the reason why they call him the package killer was he killed the victim, and each and every one of them he packaged up. He either wrapped them up in saran wrap or plastic wrap, a tarp in a couple of cases, and he either put them in a box or he put them, his victims, into a dumpster. So it wasn't the outer, packaging, but he would, he wrapped them up like a package. Each and every one of the victims. Now, the victim in Iowa, they had no idea. They've known, of this actual murder because of forensic evidence. And the one in Missouri, they had zero idea that he was connected to at all. But the one in Iowa that he can partial confession, back to that one, he left the victim in a plastic, what would you call it? Like a plastic bag that would be on a mattress. He wrapped her up in that and then put her next to the side of a drainage ditch. But they never made the initial connections between him and the crime. And the one in Missouri, they had no idea that it was him. They were actually focused on a completely different individual, and they were just waiting for that one piece of evidence to connect that person to him, that murder to that individual. And then he came along and confessed, did a partial confession along with this. And that's in the actual written confession. He said he couldn't remember the actual date, but he remembered the location, the person's name. So that's a partial confession to those two crimes, to each of them. He remembered the location where he dumped them and their names. But they're not releasing that information yet until the entire thing has worked out its course. In his current photo, he looks like a gentle grandpa. Yeah, so go back here. If I can get, there we go. Boom, boom, boom. All right, bring this back up. The photo that is on the left is what he looked like when he committed the actual murders. The photo, of him in prison is a couple of years old, but that is the most recent photo of him. Well, from 2020, but so almost 3 years old. But that's what he looked like when he was actually murdering them. Doesn't look like a gentle grandpa in the first photo, the one on your left. And back to me on the full screen. Hi. Rasputin kind of looks like Rasputin. I could see that. The beard and the slender face like Rasputin. But good morning, Pippadot, and anybody else I may have missed. Good morning and welcome to this morning's stream. What else can we learn about? Most of these crimes were initially discovered by the O'Fallon Police Department and Detective Sergeant Jody Weber, who went in and was looking at these cold cases, and she realized that these murders all had a connection before the DNA evidence was ever tested on she was like, all these murders have a similarity. Okay, some of them were dumped in dumpsters, some of them were dumped, wrapped up and put into cardboard boxes and dumped in alleyways or in a field or next to a highway. They all had different kind of locations, but what the similar thing was, they were all wrapped up in something, a plastic, saran wrap, a bag that a mattress would go in. They were all wrapped up, something like that. And whoever it was kept on coming back to the victim and leaving these trinkets. So those were the connections. And she's like, these are all connected, because she started looking into these cold cases that were unsolved. And then it's like, oh, this is connected to this case. And then it started to, all come together. And then they went back and they started, they took DNA evidence from each and every kit. And it turned out it came back to him. But the way that they tested the DNA, it didn't initially come back to him. It came back to a familial member of his family because they didn't have his DNA in the system at the time. And a lot of people are confused by this. This part I'm about to talk about. Here in the United States, we have a system called CODIS, which is a national database where they enter DNA evidence from each and every, from victims, from actual perpetrators. They're both in there and see if they match up in the system. Now, most felons who are convicted of crimes have to sit, in most states, not all. There are some states that are very liberal that take it as a violation of the individual's rights. I know I didn't make the laws. I'm just telling you about them. But they don't take DNA samples from convicted felons of certain crimes in certain states. But in other states like California and Nebraska, Iowa, Indiana, those states, they all take DNA samples. You're convicted of a felon, especially a felony against the individual, murder, rape, aggravated assault. They take a DNA sample from you before they release you. His DNA wasn't in the system yet, but a familial member of his family is how they originally connected it. And they were like, okay, there's someone who is an ancestor or relative of this person who is going to be the actual murderer. And then they actually started testing DNA, and he came up in the system, the state system, not in the federal system. And they're like, bingo. So then they went and just sat down and had a conversation with him, and he's like, I want to get this off my my mind. I want to talk about this. And this is the quote that he actually told the detectives when they came to talk to him about the DNA. He said, no matter how these victims chose to earn their living, what drugs they may have done, they should not have had their lives taken in such a dark way. I'm glad I can finally do the right thing. I must live with my past, the good and the bad parts. No more running, end quote. That is the quote that he gave to Jody Weber when she came to talk to him at the state penitentiary there. So he admitted, and then he started to just tell her about, his life and his crimes. And there were a lot of crimes that they had no idea, not just murders, but other crimes that he committed, robberies, armed robberies with a handgun, strong armed robberies, car theft. There was a whole litany of different crimes, but they were like, well, we're not really interested in those. We're interested in solving these unsolved murders. So they started talking to him about that. But again, he is in the final stages of liver failure, and he also has kidney cancer. So there's no saving him. He's going to die, and probably within the next year or so. And interesting, because he is in the state prison, he's not eligible to, because of his circumstances and because he's in double failure, organ failure, he's not eligible for to have surgery to get a new kidney or new liver. They can do as much preventative dialysis and stuff like that and medication to try to keep him as live and as comfortable as possible, but he doesn't qualify for transplant surgery. Good morning, Ann King. Welcome. It's hard for him to live with the past. Yeah, well, yeah, I must live with the past, the good and the bad parts. No more running. That was part of his actual quote. But back to the victims itself. Put their names back up on the screen. If I can get there over to the other monitor. So most of these victims they lived on what you would call the edge of society. They weren't all, so Robin, Brenda, Donna, and Sandra, those four in particular, did not necessarily work as prostitutes. They were drug addicts on top of that. They lived in, barely the seedier side of town, I guess you could call it. But they were people that if they disappeared, nobody would miss them. And yes, when it comes to Brenda and Sandra, those two in particular, nobody actually reported them missing for quite a long time. Sandra was missed right away, but people thought maybe she got out of the life or she, got on a Greyhound and took off someplace. And this is the kind of people that serial killers love to prey on. They're the weaker side of society, and those who, if they disappear tomorrow, nobody will necessarily notice. It's like, if you kill 3 prostitutes like Gary Ridgway did, is anybody really going to miss him? I mean, their John, is not going to come and report, hey, my favorite hooker is gone. And their pimp is not going to go to the police department and go, hey, man, 3 of my girls are missing. They're not going to come in and report, these people as missing right away. It's going to take a friend, somebody who's close to them, or, an associate, is going to maybe talk to, a police officer and say, hey, one of the girls who worked the stroll with me for the last, 3 months up and disappeared last Friday. She got in this pickup truck, but I haven't seen her since. And that's how a lot of these, these serial killers, they work their way, and they killed so many, and to the large part, those who are out there, as active serial killers right now today are pretty much doing the same thing. They say there's up to 1,000 active serial killers here in America right now who are out there, hunting for these women on the edge of society, the runaways, the drug addicts, the prostitutes, those who live alternative lifestyles. They're the most vulnerable, and they prey upon them because if they disappear, again, hate to sound like a broken record, they're, people are not going to miss them. Good morning, Rykart. Chris Watts may say he found Jesus, but I have doubts. Well, I extremely have doubts about anything that Christopher Watts has to say. He's been an habitual liar most of his life. He's made himself out to be more, than he ever was. He tried to say that he was the best mechanic. He was the best father. He was the best of this and best of that and best of this. When all actuality, when you talk to people who knew him growing up as a young man, people who grew up with him as a teenager into high school, and those he went to auto mechanic school with, they all say at best he was mediocre. He was average, mediocre at everything. Was he the most attentive father? I highly doubt it. I don't know of anybody who is a narcissist who thinks about themselves 24 hours a day, who can actually care about, their children or their wife. And obviously he didn't care, and we all know what he ended up doing again in the end, didn't we? Don't we? Do we know what makes a serial killer, Francie? That we do, but we don't. For a large majority of those who have been convicted and who have openly spoken, like the Ted Bundys, the John Wayne Gacy, these ones come to the top of my head. There's probably a lot more out there, but just those two individuals. Now Bundy, the later years before they executed Bundy, he lied his freaking ass off. He did. He lied about everything. If you wanted to, to say that satanic ritual was the reason why, and you came and talked to him, and you're trying to confirm that satanic ritual was the reason why he killed all his victims, Bundy would run with that, and he'd tell you, yeah, I did satanic rituals. That's why I killed all my victims. Just like the guy who came to him and said, was pornography the reason why you killed, were you addicted to pornography? Because that guy was trying to prove that pornography was the reason why, Bundy and other people kill and have these, sick fetishes. But anyways, back to John Wayne Gacy and Bundy and what makes it an actual serial killer. A lot of it starts with their younger years as a child. Like extreme abuse, and neglect. Either they're really abused physically, emotionally, and sexually, as a child. In the early years, we're talking pre-teen years. And Gacy, in his case, was abused physically by his father, by his grandmother, and his mother ignored the hell out of him, and just protected the abusers and not not Gacy. Gacy didn't want to tell people about that. Bundy, he had a fascination and he was abused, when he was younger. And in the same way, some of the stories about his younger youth that he talks about. But that's the starting point is the abuse and neglect. And then as they grew older into adolescence, childhood, when it comes to the serial killers that are out there, a lot of them had the abuse continued, the broken home, separation, multiple step parents, mother or father, or being shipped off to somebody else. Oh, sensible crime. Out of all the serial killers out there that I really feel sorry for was Elaine. Elaine Wuornos. She got a raw deal from the moment she was born, and she didn't have to become a serial killer. Most people who live through something like that end up taking their own lives as really young on. But Elaine made it through, and it. We all know this what turned out there, but she's probably the only serial killer that I've ever felt really truly bad for, because every aspect of her life where she tried to turn to someone for help to try to escape the lifestyle and the abuse and everything that was going on with her, that everybody just kept on using her. But to finish up my answer about what makes a serial killer, it starts with abuse, lack of education and support through the early adolescent years, and then once into teen years, it continues on. It may stop at some point, the physical, mental, and sexual abuse, but that's the starting point. There have been serial killers though who just start off, who are born basically as sociopaths, psychopaths. There's just something mentally wrong with them, and they just take it to the extreme. Of course, I'm not a psychologist. I'm just telling you from what I've read from all the textbooks that are over here on the shelf. Of course, these are all my wife's. I'm sure if she was here, she could give a much better answer to the question. Well, thank you, Francie. Crystalina, yikes. Well, Kelly, welcome. Welcome to anybody I may have missed while I was trying to answer the question. Kelly Carmichael, good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning. But serial killers, they're not like any other type of killer out there. Spree killers, mass shooters, the mental mindset of them all are completely different. And you can't put serial killers into just one category. They are all a little bit of everything else. The best thing about, and if you're going to become a serial killer, and if I have to train someone, if you want to be a serial killer, and the number one thing you have to do is remember, always cover your tracks. Never leave anything behind. And that's what it catches like people like Gary, up, is they leave trinkets behind. They come back to visit their victims again. Bundy, Ridgway, they came back to visit their victims over and over again, to comb their hair, to have sex with the dead corpses. There's something inside of their psychology and makeup that that makes them want to come back and relive the events of it all again. And then there's the Ed Geins of the world, that are just truly sick, and disgusting, and what they do to people while they're alive, and and then afterwards. Israel Keys. I mean, there's no one type of person that's a serial killer, and Jeffrey Dahmer was mostly ignored as a child. He loved attention. Bluebell, good morning and welcome. Dahmer. I watched the first part of the Netflix special on Jeffrey Dahmer. I have to say that I find it overall it's very well done, cinematography wise, sound, writing, script wise, very well done that way. In case you want to watch that, I do question a little bit of the artistic leeway that they've taken with some of the information that is known about Dahmer. They kind of skipped over and breezed over some of the earlier parts of his his life that I think were kind of a little bit more pivotal than they made him out to be. But if you want to watch it, it's probably going to be a good one. But I did finally get to watch the first one. Now I haven't watched any of the Lori Vallow one, Sins of Our Mother or whatever it is. I haven't watched that one yet. Dumb and Dumber. Good to see you too, Bluebell. Dahmer's father was strange. Yeah, he was. Netflix series gets grittier as it gets closer to the final. I recently learned his dad apparently worked with production. Did not know that myself. That's interesting to know. Good morning, Inner Peas. And again, give this a thumbs up if you like it. Tell those who automatically give me a thumbs down the moment that I went live that they're not right. I have one fan who shows up to every video and every live stream that I do. As soon as I pop up on their notify subscribers that I'm live, they always give me a thumbs down. That's okay. They make damn sure that no video that I ever put out will reach 100%. That's strange. I'll never understand that about people. And I mean, I guess if you don't like it, you don't like it. If you like it, you like it. Only one thumbs up. Elizabeth Grogan, good morning and welcome. Ignorant people, I don't know about ignorant. Here's what a lot of people don't really understand about YouTube is a lot of people are upset about the fact that it doesn't have the counter anymore for thumbs down. And they're like, well, does it even matter? When it all boils down to it, thumbs up and thumbs down is considered an interaction of the actual content. And it helps it move it up just ever so slightly in the suggestion. Now, if it overwhelmingly gets more thumbs down, it's not suggested then. But if the ratio is like 100, thumbs up to 1 thumbs down or 10 thumbs down, it still counts as a positive interaction. So it moves it up the algorithm and suggestions just a little. What helps move it up more is thumbs up and a comment under the video. Here in the actual chats doesn't really matter. Is it ignorant? Nah. It's, that's the world we live in. We look at people who are doing, and making content online, and people are judged, and it's a proven fact. Within the first 35 seconds of a video, if you're watching a video that you've never from a creator you've never seen before, in the first 35 seconds, if they have 15 seconds of that is filled up with like an intro B-roll, video footage, telling you who they are, you're going to automatically start to, not like the content, and then within that first 20 seconds that it's additional, they better have a hook in there, something to draw you in to make you want to watch longer. We judge people that way. I don't think it's right, but that's human. It's not just this person over this person, or this, this person being ignorant and this one's not. Little bit of Sandra. Good morning. Now I got that song in my head. Every time I see your name, Little Bit of Sandra, I always think of the song. It's a good thing. It's a good thing, Little Bit of Sandra. It just always pops in my head every time I see your name. But welcome to the stream this morning. I'll put this back up on the screen. Who we were talking about this morning for everybody who's joining us late. So we learned about a new serial killer who's now been confirmed to have killed multiple women and at least one man. His name is Gary Muehlberg. He is currently doing a life sentence in Missouri? Was it? Yeah, Missouri. And there are 4 additional women who were all. I probably forgot to even tell you that part. They were all strangled to death, but they were all wrapped up and then discarded in different ways. And I'm not on the screen. Nobody can see me. I forgot to put myself up in my little corner. Hello. All right, put myself back in my little box there. So, Gary Muehlberg is 73 years old, and he is currently in prison, like I said, for doing time for murder. But he has liver failure and kidney failure, and he's most likely not going to make it very much longer. So, part of the deal that he struck was they will not seek the death penalty against him for finally confessing to these crimes. He wrote out a confession to all the crimes. They called him the package killer because he wrapped every one of his victims up in some kind of a plastic or a tarp of some sort. And some of them, a couple of them he discarded in different ways, like in cardboard boxes, or other ones he put in the dumpsters. But the other thing is every single one of his victims, he came back and revisited them afterwards and left little trinkets for them, items that you would find at a dollar store or a Dollar General, each and every one of the victims. If it wasn't for Detective Sergeant Jody Weber with the O'Fallon Police Department, they wouldn't have ever linked all these murders together. But when she was going through the cold case files, she found these crimes that all matched. They all had the same plastic. Somebody had put trinkets on, or next to the body, over. And so she's like, oh, these are all linked. And nobody had actually looked at them before and thought that they were linked. And move my thing over to the other screen so I can move slide. These are the confirmed killers for victims for everybody who is just now recently joining us. Robin Myhan, Brenda Little R. Pruitt, Donna Riddemeyer, Sandra Little, an unknown victim, and Kenneth Doc Atkins. That is what he's actually serving time in prison for right now. A partial confession to a murder of a woman in Iowa, and a partial confession to a woman in Missouri. Now, again, they're not going to seek the death penalty, but they're working on the last 2 partial confessions and talking to him while he's still alive to try to figure out, did he really do it? Did he learn this information from somebody else? But the one in Iowa, they're definitely sure that he killed. But the one in Missouri, they didn't even link him to it all. They were actually looking at a completely different murderer for that crime. But then he made a partial confession to it. Does the UK have the death penalty? I don't believe the UK does. Do they? I see. Muehlberg is a German name. I checked. See? Well, I know people with the similar last names, and they have German ancestry. So I pick E. You is a bloody people. Good morning, Mike. I hope you're doing well, Mike. Allah Akbar. They used to hang people, I think it was in the 50s and 60s. Little Will, Big Will. I was filling out consent forms the other day for my son for school. And it feels so weird writing his name out and my name because we have the same first name and last name, obviously, my son. The only difference is a middle initial. So I'm sitting there writing it out. And first I just write, the first and last name. And I'm like, oh man, I got to squeeze a middle initial in there so they know who exactly, it's me giving consent. So it was like, William giving consent to William and William giving consent to, this is William is responsible and William is I'm like, oh my gosh. Should have thought about that before. Welcome, Siggy D09. Wow, I hope the families can't be and at least get some closure at least. So all of these murders took place over 32 years ago. All of the victims have been since buried. And they've collected all the DNA and everything else that they're ever going to get from. I don't know if they were buried and embalmed and buried, or if they were cremated. They were all poor. All of the victims are, even the one in Iowa and Missouri. They weren't all necessarily prostitutes, but they were prostitutes, drug addicts, and they lived on the edge of society. But yes, they do. I hope that the families do get closure from this. At least they know they can be able to put a face and a name to who took the life of their loved one. I'm sorry if I'm triggering somebody. I try not to, but I'm not able to pay for the subscription to StreamYard's premium service like I used to, where I could turn the camera off when I was smoking. So now I just have to deal with it this way. Frances Kidder was last woman executed in 1968. Hung in 1968 in the UK. Crystallina bacteria, good morning. Gene, good morning. Will and everyone, how are you doing this morning? Well, I'm in the little window right now. Gave up years ago, couldn't bear being controlled by tobacco, plus no smokers in my family. Elizabeth, I am the only one in my family, well, besides my mother-in-law, that smokes. Nobody else smokes, just me. And I wish I could give it up. I mean, I've tried several times, more times than I can remember. It'll probably be the death of me. Death penalty case. Are we talking about death penalty case? This is a Gene. This is a new serial killer that they have now confirmed is actually killed multiple women and at least one man. So I'm about to go to the second slide here. But this is Gary Muehlberg. The picture on would be on your left is what he looked like in 1979, in the 70s, when he was actually actively killing women. He's 73 years old today. He was linked to the case initially by familial DNA, and then through DNA that they had in the state system, he was confirmed to through DNA to actually be the murderer of all the victims that I'll put up on the next slide. They called him the package killer because he wrapped every one of his victims up the same way in either plastic or a tarp, something like that. But he disposed of their bodies in different ways. Some he put in the cardboard boxes, other he threw into dumpsters. But the important part was he additionally, like Gary Ridgway and Bundy, he always came back to visit his victim. So he relived, if maybe he got sexually aroused by it. I don't know. They didn't talk about that part. Where Bundy and Ridgway definitely got sexual arousal by coming back to visit their victims, and they both had sex with the corpses afterwards, and so they practiced necrophilia. But these are the women that one man that he confessed to actually murdering: Robin Myhan, Brenda Little R. Pruitt, Donna Rittenmeyer, Sandra Little are the four women that he has confessed to, completely confessed to, and he's been linked with DNA. And he's currently doing a life sentence for killing Kenneth Doc Atkins. But on top of it all, he gave a partial confession to killing a woman in Iowa and another one in Missouri. Buy some Cuban cigars, Will. Just chew on them gently. You'll be able to quit. Reichardt, when I golf, I smoke a cigar occasionally. I not all the time, but I'd say more often than not. I have they're not Cuban. They're actually from Mississippi. The tobacco is from Mississippi, and they're a really good cigar. I don't have them in front of me here. They're at the golf club. I keep them. At the golf club that I am a member of, Reichardt. They have in the men's club. They have a huge humidor where you can actually rent a spot and put your cigars in a wooden box with its own. But the entire cabinet is a humidor. You have yarn everywhere. It's insane. Do you like to knit inner peas? How someone can go to the dead bodies like that? Yeah, well, it happens a lot. Gary Ridgway and Bundy are just the two most popular individuals who went back and revisited those who he murdered, the victims. They disposed of their victims and always went back. That's how Bundy talked to the FBI when they were actually investigating the Green River killers, and the murders. He told them, he goes, if you want to catch him, he told them exactly his MO. He goes, if you want to catch this guy, the next victim you find, do not touch it. He's going to come back. Because Bundy told the FBI had no idea that the murderer of all those women in the Spokane area, Spokane, Washington, was coming back to the victim. They had no idea until Bundy said, "Don't touch the victim. Stay back and keep an eye on the victim from a distance, a far distance, because he's going to know if you touch that victim." And he was absolutely right. And they went back, and the next victim they found, they were like, okay, we're not going to touch her. And Gary came back. Many criminals get caught by returning to the scene of their crimes. Yeah. And Gayla, that's an actual good point. Those who are serial arsonists love to watch what they did. Serial arsonists, people who set fires. They love to watch the actual devastation of what they've done. There's a lot of types of criminals like that. Good point again, Gayla. that like to come back and revisit the crimes that they actually they committed. What do you like to make most? Ooh, talking about crocheting. You, the package serial killer. Where in Missouri? I don't know if I see if all four of them were strangled and killed in the 1990s. I was going to make an actual video about this. So this is give you a little insight into my mindset. I find a story. I write out a script like this first. All right, and this is 3 pages long. I write it out, and then I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's highlight marker on here. I highlight things through it, and then I go through and I like to make points, and I'm like, okay, this is what I should expand on this part a little bit more. But to answer your question about where in Missouri, it does not. I do not. Well, it does. I did not put it in here. I just put in that it was in the state of Missouri. Again, in his confession, he didn't address that either. But sorry, I'm sure that it's on the internet, but I hate to say that, hey, you have to look it up on the internet. I didn't look at it, at least this part. So I write out a script. Then I rewrite it again. I might write a script out 3 or 4 times before I put it into the teleprompter, which on my over here when I do the setup. So these lights all move, back and forth. That black wall that's behind me here, that's on that where that chair is, this green chair right here. That's 8 feet from me right now. That black wall is. All right. And I film most of my videos. They're over here pointed at this wall right here with the background. Or this black wall is actually a curtain, I guess you could call it. It's a backdrop curtain for studios. And I can actually remove that, and the wall is like right there behind it. But I either film again here or here. And I have a teleprompter that's on this tripod right here. This is a tripod, but up there at the top, there's an actual teleprompter. So I'll write out a script. I might write it out 3 or 4 times, and then I type it out and I upload it to the teleprompter by connecting it to my phone, and then I shoot the video there. But I never got to that point. I wrote this out this past maybe about a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I'm from Kansas City, where Bob Bernella, the serial killer, picked up gay men from bars like Jeffrey Dahmer, but he documented the gory details of in a journal. Oh, there's so many of them out there like that. The FBI has got a really, really interesting case. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of the actual case itself. They called him the Ghost Murderer. That was the name that they actually gave this person because they don't know who he is. An individual bought a storage unit in, I think it was McLaughlin, Nevada, or just outside of Las Vegas, Nevada. They bought a storage unit, and inside the storage unit there was a litany of different personal effects, furniture and junk like that. But inside of a blue and silver hope chest, there was 32 diaries that were in there that detailed horrific kidnappings, murders, and abuse that were all written out, page by page, on each and every victim. And he gave each person, not by their own names, but he gave them a name. They don't know if it was real or not, but they still call him the Ghost Murders because he always referred to himself as if he was a ghost and could see, and kind of hovering over the actual events. So he, would talk about how he tortured some of these people, with mostly women. There were a couple men in there, but they actually have it listed as a number on their unsolved cold cases. I stumbled across it a couple of times. I find references to the ghost murders whenever researching cases. Well, how to avoid serial killers. Well, you want to avoid serial killers. Don't ever leave your home. Don't order food to your home, and never pick up your phone. That's how you avoid serial killers. Of course, that's not much of a life, but they're out there everywhere. There's the guy who was a serial killer who worked as an Uber delivery driver. There was the guy who was a serial rapist in California, who he didn't necessarily meet women through Tinder, but he met them through dating apps. But he was a serial rapist. Hey, Juicy Jules. Ew, Genie. Bob Burnett injected Drano in his victims' eyes to watch them die slowly. Wasn't he also, wasn't Bob trying to make a zombie? I thought there was part of the, his Drano thing was trying to make someone who was alive, but they were also sexually available for him. I remember something like that about him. But I definitely remember the Drano part. And don't help anyone with a cast on. Good point, Kristalina. Yeah, you don't want to fall for that Bundy ruse. If the cast on the arm or drop their books and you help them pick them up. Sicko like Watts. Something really fascinating about Christopher Watts is that he's not a very fascinating individual. When you look at Christopher Watts and his life, what he did, it's not anything new that hasn't happened 1,000 times before. Family annihilators are unlike any other type of murderer out there. And it's very interesting. And I really do hope that the largest study of family annihilators was done by the New Queensland University in Australia. They did the absolutely largest breakdown and case study on it, and I do believe that they've talked about doing an update to it, because it's been several years since they did it. I'm very interested in family annihilators. Yeah, but there's been a lot of people out there, but Christopher Watts wasn't all that unique. I mean, he may have disposed of the bodies in a unique way, but he used what was available to him. If he would have worked at a supermarket, he probably would have thrown them into a crusher. I hate to say it, but that's the truth. Affair with with another one, that's not unique. That happens. It's probably happening right now. Within a couple hundred yards of each of us. I don't know. People do all kinds of stuff. Lori Cox is a serial killer on her family members. So leaving your house isn't necessarily, yeah, that's true. Isn't it interesting though? I'm kind of waiting to see what the hell happens there in the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell case. So Lori's attorneys asked for no cameras, and no video, no still photography in the court. The prosecuting attorney agreed with her. Judge Boyce ruled and said, yes, we'll agree. We will not have any still photography and no video footage of the actual case at all. So Lori, and her attorneys have won that. And then Chad Daybell said, oh no, I want I want this. I want still photography. I want video in my case. I want people, and for my family, I want them to, who can't make it here. I want them to be able to see the case. And but when he made the decision, he made that retroactive for Chad Daybell before his actual legal team ever filed anything on the matter at all. So now Judge Boyce has got to rule on that. If they keep it as one case, which I think is absolutely foolish to keep it as one case, they should separate the two cases. I agree with the attorneys completely on that. But if they keep it as one case, how can you retroactively, take away the rights and the decisions for Chad? So I couldn't read murder case books. I used to have nightmares. Never have murdered his unborn baby and 2 little girls. What? Chris Watts would never have murdered his unborn baby and 2 little girls if he didn't meet Nicole Kessinger. She was the driving force behind the murders, in your opinion. I somewhat agree with that, Gene. I believe that she was probably a catalyst to it. I don't think that she talked him into it, because by studying, family annihilators, we know that family annihilators can't be talked into it, and they can't be talked out of it either. They have already made up in their minds, and this goes back to so many that we've studied over the years. Not myself, but psychologists and psychotherapists that have people who study this for a living. Have we already know that family annihilators, they make up in their minds that their family is suffering just as much as they are inside. So where Christopher Watts felt that society didn't care about him, he didn't have a future, he didn't have the life that he wanted and desired. He had already at some point, and maybe not consciously every day, but he felt that his daughters and Shanann and unborn son were all being punished. And the news of Shanann being pregnant with baby Nico was probably, that one that it's like, they say the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. And then you add in there, you have this younger version of Shanann, or a look-alike. I mean, if you put Shanann and Nicole Kessinger next to each other, they basically have the same body type, the same hairstyle. They have this. They find the humor the same way. They had the same likes and dislikes. He was basically replacing one with another. But I don't necessarily say that think that it's it was the only reason, but it definitely was another piece to the puzzle that that sent it in that direction. Didn't want to support payments. Same with Lori and Chad. Lori most likely didn't want. She didn't want kids or something. Good morning, Danielle. When it comes to Lori Vallow, Daybell, Cox, whatever, throw every last name at, she's had a lot of them. Lori had, from what I understand about Lori and what I've read about Lori, is she has always had a religious belief, not just when she converted to becoming an LDS member, but she's always believed in fringe ideas her entire life growing up, and then going into her adulthood, she always sought out those who were on the outside. And then stumbling upon someone like Chad Daybell, who wrote about and talked about openly these alternative theories and, of passing through to the light, and the other side of the veil. I think that in her situation, it was, yeah, Yeah, I really believe this. And not that he brainwashed her into believing it. She was already out there on the outskirts of everything, and that was just something she could latch onto. Because in the podcast that she did with Melanie, the two of them together, she spoke about a lot of different things. I wish all those episodes were still online so people could actually sit down and listen to them. But Lori, her entire family was exposable. She didn't care about her kids. She didn't care about anyone. She cared about herself, and everything else was just like throwing gasoline on the fire for her. Nurse Bev, good morning and welcome. I hope you are doing well, Miss Nurse Bev. Watching the next episode on Lori was very interesting. I haven't watched it yet. Now, from what I understand about it, though, it's more from Colby Ryan's perspective, and he's like the main source behind most of the material, along with what's already known out there in the public about Lori. But I haven't. I just last night I watched the first one about Dahmer, and I want to probably take me another week, to finish, to actually be able to sit down and watch all of them, and finish that up. Okie dokie. Good morning. But I originally didn't plan on watching it, but I want to see, what Netflix is actually has to say about it. What they bring up. Her son mentioned the reason as to why she changed. I won't say anymore. Lori's mother is a very strange individual. She was called a nymphomaniac. On Bloody Saturday as well. So daughters were cracking up. No internet, kids don't know how to survive without it these days. Oh boy, Kelly, I hang out at my house for a half an hour if there's no internet. My son and my daughter absolutely lose it. They don't know what to do. I'm like, pick up a book, read a book. Don't have light? Here's a flashlight. Gone are the days, when I was a kid, I'd sit and read books, by flashlight in bed at night, picking up a book. I don't know. Will, have you seen Sherry Pepin's interrogation? Francie, yes. Yes, I have. Was it Scott who had it up on his channel, or has it up still on his channel? He did a video on it, I believe. Scott, over with True Crime Loser. Good morning, Schmida fam. I've been a subscriber to Scott's channel for a long time. True Crime Loser is Scott. Yep. Unplugged for a while, so chill. A little, will they survive? I know, right? No internet, no TV, no computers, nothing. I got a DVD cabinet with about 500 DVDs in it in the house, but trying to show them that they could watch a movie that way and pass the time. Is that, I don't want to do that. What's on Netflix? What's on YouTube? What's on, this or that? I'm like, nah. Janice, happy Saturday. Happy Saturday to you too, Janice. Lawyers are claiming there is hostile defense between Jim Archibald and John Pryor. They want separate trials. It's not that there is Gene. It's not that there's a hostile defense. That is one of the defenses. Is Chad can, if they keep the case together, Chad and Lori together. How is Chad going to be able to bring up the hostile defense the same? Oh, it was her. It was her and her brother the whole time. I had no part in it. I didn't know about it until afterwards. That is one of the possible defenses that he can have, that it was all her. And likewise, she can point the finger at him and say he's the one who made us all do it. Now that's a hostile defense between parties. That's what a hostile defense is. So I'm modding in another channel right now. I want to stop by. Broken Justice, good morning. I hope you are doing well. Stop by and say hello. Show my support. I miss you. I'm the only mod I would ever come over anyways. Well, thank you. I hope you are doing well, sweetheart. It was nice chatting. Off to have a bath and relax with a book. Have fun and stay safe. Thank you, Kelly. You too. So, I'll show you guys the book that I'm reading right now. Straight Talk About Criminals by Stanton E. Samnow, co-author of The Crime Personality. I am currently, with my bookmark, I am on page 116. I think that's 116. Well, whatever it is, I'm on chapter 10. Criminals, not drugs, cause crime. I'm on chapter 10 right now. A very good book. It's written from a factual standpoint about criminals and case studies into what causes people to do the things that they do, criminal. But it's a very good book. Of Nicholas Cruz. I don't know who Nicholas Cruz is. At least the name is not ringing a bell with me right now. Don't know who he is. At least after a while of doing this, and this is absolute truth, ladies and gentlemen. Who won yesterday's Hurricane Trivia? I wasn't able to finish Hurricane Trivia last night because of work. Reichardt, the winners of Hurricane Trivia were everyone who stopped in and took part. So, Reichardt, you are a winner of Hurricane Trivia. There is no real winner or loser in the trivia games that I play. Everybody, it's just for fun. So, I might do one next Friday. We're kind of kicking around the idea, maybe next Friday doing a trivia night about dumb criminals. That's one of the suggestions that was sent to me by one of the viewers and subscribers. So for the win, Reichardt, there's your trophy. Thank you, Interpeas. It would be good if you read parts of the book, Kristalina. I would. He's the Parkland shooter. Oh, okay. Well, I've heard of the Parkland shooter, definitely. It's after a while, like I was saying, a lot of these, murderers and stuff like that, I can't keep them straight. Even some of the bigger cases. Dennis Rader, Ridgway, Bundy. I mean, Bundy always stands out differently from the rest, but a lot of them, after a while, it's like, did this person do it this way or did they do it that way? Which one was the one that tied the woman to the tree? Was it Ridgway? Was it Gary? Was it the Night Stalker? Who the hell was it? And then I have to actually sit down and mentally think about which one of them actually did it. Sounds like good trivia. But that one of the suggestions for trivia night on Friday is to do one on dumb criminals. That we might do it. I mean, I have an entire folder of just ones that are dumb criminals. Used to do it. Dumb criminals. They put them in videos, kind of like Scott Reich does. Reich. However you decide that you want to pronounce his last name, people get mad at me. They're like, oh, that's not the way we pronounce it here, in Scotland. That's not the way we pronounce it here in Alabama. Whatever, Reich or Reich, whichever you prefer. But over on Crime Talk, he does a stupid criminal, dumb criminal at the end of each of his videos. It was homecoming for Okie Dokie. Some grandkids here. We're in a parade, some in a band, some on the team, etc. So busy. Well, that's the more important part, Okie Dokie, is you got to spend time with family. So many of us miss the spending time with our families. And we all only get a finite amount of time in this life, and none of us knows when our clock is up. I would much rather spend time with my family, but I'm drawn to this like a moth to a light. I can't leave this alone. Some reason inside of this brain here, ladies and gentlemen, I am stuck in this. And every day, if I'm not here in front of you live, I'm sitting somewhere else reading about or studying about these people and the crimes that they've committed. So I might as well talk to you about it. Jeffrey Dahmer, years ago in Berlin, robbed a bank, took a lady hostage. She was an extra large, and they got stuck in a revolving door. That must have been funny. Look, that's the one thing that always drawn me to crime. It's drawn me to crime. Drawn me to crime is the psychology behind it all. I wish I could understand what makes people do the things that they do. Even you could expand that to why do people judge each other on the internet. If you only hear 35 seconds of someone, why do you automatically hear what you hear in that 35 seconds? How do you decide that you don't like them or you don't want to hear anything else by them? I don't know. I don't understand why people are so quick to judge, but in a lot of cases, that's the way the society is. You see the homeless man, begging for your change on the side of the street, as Whitey Ford would say, and how do you know what brought that man to that situation? Maybe it was circumstances outside of his control. Maybe it wasn't alcohol or drugs that he lost it all over. Maybe the alcohol and drugs now is how he's dealing with the fact that he's lost everything. Maybe he was the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and now he's sitting on the street corner begging for your change, so he can buy, something to eat, or alcohol to, self-medicate himself over the fact that he's lost everything. His kids won't talk to him. Nobody will bring him in because he's lost it all. You don't know, but people are so quick to judge that individual, who's sitting on the street, or the person you see, who committed, horrific crimes, maybe a serial killer like Elaine Wuornos. We see that the outcome, she killed people. That she is terrible. Let's execute her, and they did. They executed her, and then you find out about her life story and how much abuse, physical, mental, sexual abuse that she lived through her entire life. And you wonder to yourself, did we do the right thing in that situation? Did we have mercy on her? Was taking her life the only answer to it? And if that was the answer to the outcome of what she did, then what about all the people who are still alive, who are the ones that caused all of this pain and suffering for her entire life? Even as an adult, when she was trying to break away from it, and she befriended, a law enforcement officer. I won't use his name, but I know it. And she tried to do it that way, get away from it all. And yet the abuse just kept on coming. And it didn't matter where she went or how far away she went from home. Every turn, she was like a magnet for people that just wanted to abuse her and use her. Did we do the right thing? And why haven't we punished all these other people out there? Quick to judge. We see her as, well, she's a killer. You got to punish her for her crimes. Let's execute her. Some people, obviously, the Bundys, the Gacy's, the Ridgeways, the Dennis Raiders of the world, they deserve to be executed. They deserve to be punished for what they did. I'm not saying we don't do that. Debbie Collier's case, very strange, suspicious how she died. I've looked into it a little bit, okie dokie, but not a whole lot. Lane's was a defense mechanism. I find it strange we look down on others for taking others' lives, but we publicly take others' lives in a system every day. Why is one wrong and one right? In so many opinions. Yeah, that's true, Danielle. Very, very good point. Very good point. And other countries have done away with, capital punishment, an eye for an eye, if you will. They've done away with it. And, and statistically, we know that in every state of the United States that actually has the capital punishment and actively uses capital punishment, it has never, ever deterred crime. They have seen the same amount of murders. They've seen the same amount of crime across the board, even if they actively use it. Look at the state of Texas. Sorry, Texas. I know you guys would install electric bleachers and zap 100 people all at once if you could, but you can't. But, and they love to execute people in Texas. My only point. I'm making fun of the state. God knows, people in Texas, that's my state. Anyway, my point is, though, the capital punishment has never been a deterrent for crime. And those talking suits in Washington, every time they're running for office and they tell you that they're tough on crime and they support the capital punishment, you just have to look at them and say, have you ever read any of the statistics that the Department of Justice has on capital punishment? Every single person who has ever murdered someone, who has been sentenced to death, when you ask them, was the death penalty, a reason why you didn't kill more? No, is their answer. They have a personal reason why they needed to kill this person. They did this because they wanted to do it. I did it because it was an accident, whatever the hell the reason is. But capital punishment has never been a deterrent. But here we are in America, and we say, an eye for an eye. You do something wrong that's egregious to a point, we will execute your ass, or make you sit on death row for 30 years, and you may die of natural causes in the meantime. It's just my opinion, but it's also factually based. But in Europe, again, no capital punishment. They haven't seen a spike in crime since they did away with capital punishment. Then there's other countries like in the EU, and the United Emirates, the crime rate is so low there because everybody knows you don't F around, man. They're going to take your life, or they're going to chop your hand off. They're going to do something. They're going to make sure that you are punished if you commit even a small crime. So you can go to one extreme or to the other. I don't find it necessary to verbally attack YouTube creators if I disagree with them, but many do. Oh, okie dokie. You would be surprised if I put up, some of the comments, on the screen of, things that people have said about me to my face, in person, in the comment section. and how far people will go behind the scenes into, Reddit or to Facebook if they don't like what, or agree with someone about me personally, what they've said in other forums, doing anything and everything they can to drive people away. Don't watch this guy. He's an asshole. Don't watch this guy. He's a drug addict. Don't watch this guy. He does this, or whatever the damn reasons might be. A young British girl recently took her own life as a result of online bullying. It's so tragic. That's sad. We had the case here in America where the girlfriend actually convinced her boyfriend or ex-boyfriend to take his life. She bullied him into it. She's just like, don't talk about it, just do it. She knew he was mentally, weak at the time, and she just kept on pushing him and pushing him and pushing him, and then he did it. Online bullying is not a joke. I don't like the idea of paying for a murder of life, housing, food, free medical for life. That's why I'm good with the death penalty. It all depends on where they live, Janice. Medical is not free in most state prisons. Federal, different story. But in state prisons, medical's not free. They all have a copay. It may only be $5 or $10, but then again, I only pay $3 when I go see the doctor. But that's the way the world works. I don't disagree with the death penalty. I think that we overuse it in some cases. I do not think that we should be executing those who are mentally deficient, they know are mentally deficient. They don't have to test the guy who can't read his own Miranda rights. If you can't read them and you can't understand them, why are we executing this person? Point blank, you shouldn't be doing it. Likewise, if someone commits a horrific crime at 13 years of age, we sentence them to life in prison forever, with no possibility of parole. Is that fair? How about a 13-year-old we give a death sentence to and then execute? We've done that too. I think that we're far overreaching there because we know, and we scientifically know that the brain of a 13-year-old is unable to fully understand the consequences of their actions. Yeah, it may be horrific, that this 13-year-old killed this little 9-year-old girl, but did he actually understand and fully comprehend what he was doing? Maybe the best recourse is we just put them, in a group home somewhere, with other kids who've committed crimes, and we don't let them back into society. But do we have to incarcerate them? And it costs what, millions of dollars lifetime to keep someone in prison before we execute them. So as a content creator, it might be difficult to not take things personally. Kudos to you, Will. I'm a fan of yours because you speak the truth as you see it, but allow others free choice too. Well, thank you, okie dokie. I think everybody's got an opinion, and we could, look at two things at the same way, the same information, and we might, come to different conclusions from it. That's what makes the world the best place that we can be. If we can look at it and we can sit down and discuss it, like adults. I mean, I'm not going to sit down and have a conversation, a debate with a 12-year-old because, well, they're going to take everything from a Minecraft mindset versus, as a generality. Not all 12-year-olds are the same. God knows my daughter wasn't the same at 12 as other 12-year-olds in her school. Why are so many prisons called corrections institutes when the recidivism rate is so high? Interesting question, Elizabeth. It goes back to the Quakers. When the Quakers came to America, that's the absolute honest answer. Back then, they believed in prayer, and they believed that there was a way to reform an actual inmate. And then by the 1970s here in America, we got away from doing reform and prayer as a by that time prayer and religious practices and reform was going to the wayside. Now all prisons do is basically house inmates. We strip them from the ability to ever get an education. We've stripped them from the ability to ever get meaningful psychotherapy. We say, here you go. Here we release you into the jungle of testosterone, where you're going to be either murdered or bullied or all the above. Learn to defend yourself with this toothbrush. And we put them in the prison system, and all it does is make them harder. But yet we know that 73% of all inmates who go into the state prison system will eventually be released. 73%. And then once they come back out of prison, we restrict them from being able to get housing, because if you're a convicted felon, ladies and gentlemen, you're not allowed to, in most states, reside in any residency for more than 12 hours. That if the housing is Section 8, or if it is a controlled rent environment for someone who is on welfare. So you can't be paroled back to your mom. This is in most states, not all. Then we say, you have to, here on this job application for a job, to push this broom in a parking lot at 11 o'clock at night when nobody's here, or to mop the floors, in this closed supermarket at night. You must tell us about your entire history of every felony conviction, every misdemeanor that you've ever had. And if we find out you didn't tell us the truth, we can fire you immediately, no questions asked, because you lied on your application. So you can't, in most places, you can't get housing. You can't get school afterwards after being released. You can't get a job. And then we wonder why it's just a revolving door. How are you supposed to break the cycle? Very few do. There are some good examples of people out there who have been able to. There's a YouTube channel here on a YouTube channel called The After Prison Show. The creator of that, Joe Guerrero, has stopped making content on that channel, but he has another channel now. It's called Joe Does Stuff. California Department of Corrections has many educational programs for inmates. However, the recidivism rate remains high. Well, that's an individual state, Gala, but I understand a lot of states. Here in Washington State, we have, you can still get a high school diploma. You can still get your AA while in college, college courses, and you can also, depending upon if you're at Walla Walla Penitentiary or McNeil Island, you can definitely take correspondence classes, trade classes to have a job, but the same restrictions over housing and employment afterwards are still there. And yeah, it all adds to the entire reason why there's recidivism rate. That, and you have to get the person out of the way of their past. If you take a drug addict and you get them clean, and then you remove them from the situation after they've been clean for some time, and you move them away from where their haunts were, their friends were, and everything else, and you don't give them the support network, NA or whatever out here, they're going. The chances are not going to 100%, but the recidivism, the chances of they're going to go back to the drugs again if they don't have that support group around them, and they don't have the steps to keep them clean and sober, is high. But if you put them back in the same situation, even in the same neighborhood, and you say, here is, NA, and here's, therapy and everything else that you need, the chances are a lot higher that they're not going to go back to drugs. Same thing with criminals. If you don't break that cycle of between, the individual committing the crimes, and give them a reason and a way to survive and make a living and, and feed themselves, you're going to get the recidivism rate, even if they get the education. In Europe, education and working for pay, medical treatment and activities are mostly compulsory in prison. It does appear to work. There are some prison systems, Elizabeth. I don't know about everywhere in Europe, but there are some that do have some really good uh, systems in place where they're in prison, but they're free to come and go. Systems where the prisoner works within the community. They're held accountable for their crimes, but they must make amends basically for what they've done, and that's the way it should be. Instead of saying, okay, we're just going to fine you, stick you in a jail cell, and they're going to let you out. Then we're going to hold all, and now I'm not even going to get into the parole system and probation system in America. That's just a system that was made up for people, to make money. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to wrap up the stream right here. I want to thank everyone again for stopping in this morning and learning about Gary Muehlberg, the new serial killer, in Missouri, the package killer. I do plan to read up on him some more and find out more about him, especially if he completes the confession for those two, victims, one in Iowa and one in Missouri. So we'll find out if what comes of that. And if I do, am able to come up with more, I'll actually do a video on it later on. But thank you again, everyone. You all have a wonderful day today, and I will see you soon again. You all have a great weekend.